All right, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending this May 14th, 2025 BAO large meeting in the Crawlcheck Public Meeting Room at number 2 George Street. My name is Jay White, and I'll be serving as chairman this afternoon. Other board members that are present are Luda Subchuck, James Metters, Seton Brown, and Joel Trantham, who joins us now as a full-time board member, no longer an alternate. So, sorry. City staff present here tonight are BD Worthing Galvin, the city architect, Lawrence Courtney, and Brad Thomas back there to make sure we stay in line. I'll go over the procedures that you've all heard before. Applicants have been required to submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Staff will control the slide presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during the presentation, unless the clicker is working.
It hopefully is.
50-50.
Unless Jeffrey breaks it on the first one.
Yeah, applicants, staff, and board members are required to give your names before speaking. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the City of Charleston Public Meeting channel on YouTube. Your appearance here is your consent to be recorded. In the order of the meeting will be as follows. First will be an introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the public. Then an applicant presentation, 10-minute time limit or so determined by the chair with any questions of the applicant for the board and staff. Any and all presenters should clearly state your names for the record. Any persons affiliated with the project, be it an owner, developer, designer, consultant, etc., should speak during this portion of the meeting rather than during public comment. That will be followed by a period of public comment, and all applications are part of a public meeting. Written public comments, of which we only received one, were due by noon the day before this meeting, and they've all been disseminated to the board member in advance. Written comments will not be read aloud during the meeting unless requested by a member of the board with permission of the chair. Any member of the public here that wishes to be heard in person on an agenda item at this time is requested to state their name and address for the record, and to be reminded that there's a 2-minute time limit for these remarks unless extended by me. The applicant does not respond to comments made during the public comment period. This will be followed by city staff comments and recommendation, and then a 5-minute period for the applicant to respond or clarify anything stated during the previous 2 episodes, public comment and city staff comments. This will then turn over to a board discussion and a vote. The applicant's presentation is over, public comment is closed. The applicant can clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising a hand and waiting to be called upon. Board members will be polled by the chair for comments and for their vote on a motion. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim, and if I've got it wrong, please correct me. And once a motion is in proper order and seconded, each member when voting should respond yea in favor or nay not in favor. So study will be posted on the city website. No items have been withdrawn or deferred. The one public comment we received was on 68 Haygood. And then as a reminder, please turn off all cell phones or other potentially disruptive devices. Please limit comments to architecture only. Any comments regarding zoning, traffic, livability concerns like trash or events really can't be heard here because they are not related to our purview. Okay, Ellie.
Before we start, Mr. Chair, I would like to formally thank and recognize you for your years of service to the city of Charleston. I mean, it's almost too much to comprehend and understand how much you have given to us. This is Mr. White's final meeting as a full-time board member, and will become an occasional alternate when we need it. Because as we said, Joel Trantham will be our new full-time board member. So I just want to thank you for your services.
Thank you. And I'll try to make this one worthy of remembrance. But I don't have any sort of speech prepared, but I'll tell you 2 things. One is that I feel like being on this board and serving in this role is a high honor for an architect in Charleston. And I have the utmost respect for the people of Charleston for entrusting me with this responsibility. So shall we proceed?
Sounds good.
Okay, let's see, meeting results. Review of minutes from the April 9th, 2025 meeting. Do I hear any comments or a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Okay, you have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Passes 5-0. 584 meeting. Oh, sorry, no, that's wrong.
Yep, so-
162 Ashley.
First agenda item up is 162 Ashley Avenue. It is new construction in the Height District 8530 in the Old City District. And they are requesting conceptual approval of an apartment building with ground level retail. And here is the location to orient everyone, and we're ready for applicant presentation.
Thank you, BD, and good evening. Jeffrey Rendrain, Alistair P. I just want to say I echo BD's sentiment, Jay, and I appreciate your time here.
You just got knocked 5 points.
We're going for it, okay. Again, I think we've heard a lot of great comments the last 2 times here, and we're going to focus on the last round, obviously. The main comments we heard from board and staff were on the north elevation, and just it felt still too monolithic. Need a little bit more refinement and breaking down to that scale. In addition to that, city staff had comments about the use of the green color. So we explored that as well, and the use of wood on the soffit at the porch element. So we'll see that today. So you can see here are improvements facing the Ashley Avenue in the north elevation. So what we really try to do here is start to break down and articulate that secondary mass, the horizontal siding mass facing the north, and then you'll see horseshoe. So what we ended up using was a kind of a hyphen element between the 2 masses and allowing that to expand up to the top. So we really have an articulated top along that side facing north. And we continued the vertical rhythms. You'll see maybe a little bit larger here between the base, marching down on the north side, these widening up to about 2'2", about 26 inches wide, and allows the roof leader still to come down and be exposed there, but give them a little more breathing space. And then, as you can see at the north here, it really starts to break down that scale. I think one thing I want to mention on this previous slide, sorry. One thing I think this also really helped us do is step down this massing as well. Even though it's more of a visual step there, but going from the white to the dark, which we're looking at Charleston green as the color there. Not sure if it's rendering great, but it's Charleston green, really historic and classic color there. And it steps down to that siding, in addition, it steps down to the porch. So we start to read that as almost three steps and genuflecting to the neighborhood. So at the north there, you start to see again that top expression weaving itself down between the panels and wrapping along the east side, which is facing the garage. Larger. Again, those gaps between the panels are 26 inches wide. And then at the base, really looking again at the porch element, some things we made some improvements from the original design to the second round here, and we kind of kept a lot of it the same, but we did bring back that wood soffit element. Here in the color was kind of obviously could feel dated. We tend to agree with that comment there. We wanted to bring that mark back in to the entrance there, and so you'll see that carved in where the steps reach up and on the soffit. But we still felt like bringing some of that Charleston green color in, and so we have a reduced palette of materials. So all the metal at the porch element and the base would all be that Charleston green color, as well as the siding going up. And this is how it approaches and looks from south facing or heading up north on Ashley. Again, you start to really read the 3 masses stepping down. And here you kind of see the full breadth of all the language of the materials, right? The brick, the wood, the Charleston green that expresses itself in siding on the vertical side, at the porch, and at these window portals. Yeah, and that's what we have for you today. We'd love to hear your comments and thoughts here, but we feel like this has really gone really well, and we love the dialogue that we've had with y'all. Appreciate it.
Okay, any questions for that? Hearing none, we'll move on to public comments.
Anna Catherine Alexander with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We really appreciate the applicant meeting with us on recent revisions as they have throughout this process. We really do appreciate that there's been effort to visually step down towards the neighborhood with the updates in this design, but in keeping with our previous comments, we do reiterate that the actual height of the northern mast should step down further to soften the transition to the 2.5-story single house and the adjacent context. And then lastly, also in keeping with our previous comments, we continue to encourage study of options to work around that transformer location that's on the screen there to create a more open and continuous ground floor treatment, in particular, increasing the opening size and continuing the porch expression to that south corner if possible. Thank you so much.
Any further public comment? Staff?
Sure. At the April 2025 meeting, the board deferred this application for board and staff conditions, which included restudy the use of green throughout for an alternative color choice and continued study of the north elevation to break down the perception of the mass. The applicant has replaced the use of bright green with Charleston green. Staff approve of this color change. The applicant has restudied the north elevation to include a material and color change at the top floor and increased width to the channels that provide visual breaks along the facade. Staff support the appearance of the vertical reveals, which create the perception of vertical bays rather than one long mass. Staff also affirm the color change, which provides the illusion of stepping down toward the residential context. There is a slight depth change on the north elevation between the lighter metal panels and the dark siding. Staff encourage increasing that depth even further during preliminary. Staff also prefer higher end materials other than fiber cement siding for this building. If siding is to be used, samples need to be presented at preliminary. Staff encourage the study of detailing that does not mimic traditional siding, but rather a detail such as nickel gap, channel gap, be studied to give it a more contemporary look. Staff conditions at preliminary bring samples of all proposed materials and provide details of key moments of the elevation in the drawing set. And staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with board and staff.
Any applicant response? Okay, board discussion.
Jeffrey, what's the story with the transformer again?
So the story of the transformer is they're only street facing facade. And so we try to put in the back of the building, maybe work out an easement with MUSC. But looking at that, they wouldn't be able to get a truck back. We're going to be able to get a truck back to the building. The other suggestions and thoughts we had, we're trying to place it inside, or I should stand up here, I guess. Sorry, inside the building. But we do have a 40-foot setback requirement there. And so it's too far. They would have to allow a truck to pull onto the site to get to that. And ideally you would just have, a facade of louvers at that point and the door. Ideally you'd stick that on the side then, but again, the truck would not be able to get into it. And so we felt like placing it at this southwest corner was the best and allow the expression of that plenum just continue and hide that, conceal that completely, so.
Thank you. It's better.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
And I'll dive in really quickly to say that it does appear that y'all have addressed, most of the comments and concerns you've heard from the board staff. I do think that staff's comments regarding the materials are appropriate because you're building right on the edge of the medical district and there's a certain palette there. And there's a lot of materials like fiber cement that are they're foreign to the historic context to the north and they're foreign to the campus context elsewhere.
I think I'd also like to push on, I agree a lot with staff's comment, that their kind of last comment about the depth change. And I think there's an interesting moment here at the second story transitioning to the third story where there's a reveal and it's not a large depth, but it leads to kind of a volumetric change in the building. And whenever I look at the distance between the kind of metal panels and the siding, it's very much so a surface level or ornamentation change that's there. So I think as this might be evolved or pushed to preliminary, really studying that and learning. I know the metal panels are slipping up slightly in the current drawing, which is, I think, pushing more towards that surface application and anything that can be done to kind of, I know it's visually trying to reduce the mass, but things that can do that. I think changes between, glazing and solid surface or things that lead to those volumetric changes when they're in a singular plane. Sometimes fenestration to fenestration, not so much. And so I don't know if there's ways for you to press that, but I think studying and pushing that point as you move forward is a critical component of this too.
Any other board comments or a motion perhaps?
Quickly, I agree with all the comments from staff pretty much, and yes, material is very important here. And cementitious siding is too residential, even so this is residential but multifamily, but it doesn't fit with the modern design, so need to look at that big time, I think. And rest of it is, I guess, it's a third time around and very difficult site. And program needs to be fulfilled, so I thank you about that.
I think I would make a motion probably for conceptual approval with staff comments and board and staff discussion here, taking into account some of those critical moments that are typically at conceptual, also be revisited at preliminary as well.
All right, I unfortunately wasn't fast enough to get that verbatim, but I think we would normally render that to be conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
Okay.
If that's-
I think that's fine.
All right. Name Joel Trantham, do I have a second?
I will second them.
Okay, subset. All right, I'm gonna go down the roll here. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Okay, Mr. Metters.
Yay in favor.
All right, subject.
Yeah, in favor.
All right, Mr. Trantham,
Yay in favor.
and I vote likewise, and motion carries 5-0.
Item number 2 is 657 King Street, new construction, height district 4-6 in the Olden Historic District. And they are requesting conceptual approval for the construction of a new hotel. Lauren is going to show us the location here on King Street by the crosstown. And then we're ready for applicant presentation.
Thank you. I'm Ashley Jennings, the architect on the project. I'm with you tonight, or my clients are sitting in the classroom. The last time this project was here, we got some comments from the board that included that the design had been improved, but was still boxy, that there needed to be some more push and pull and articulation of the massing, that the penthouse was not design-wise associated with the structure, and that the material palette was moving in a good direction. So in response to those comments, we started to look at the push and pull of the building. We've made a good many changes that include pushing and pulling those elements that flanked the building. We've recessed the window and door openings back into the building. We have changed the direction of the penthouse, and we've actually added some detail to the canopy, and we've added a little bit more detail to the surround, and we stepped in the top floor. And so we'll look at, I don't know if this is pretty quickly since y'all seen this before. This, of course, to remind you, is the site. These are some precedents of buildings in the neighborhood, just so that we understand the context of the newer structures that are there. Sanborn maps. And this is our site plan. I'm not sure that there's a lot to talk about on the site plan other than the massing of the building has changed slightly as we pushed and pulled those elements. You can see now how it's changed if we go from one to the other, how we've pushed those elements back. And you can see the previous submittal on the left and the proposed submittal on the right. We've also changed the color palette of the proposal to a lighter color brick and a darker color window. And we've also added a lot of fenestration to the penthouse elements, which we'll get to in a minute. This is just an orthographic elevation of the structure so you can understand. We've removed some of the banding on the top floor and stepped it in. And we've maintained the banding at the bottom. And here's a render of that elevation. This is the King Street elevation. This is another detail of the brick detailing on the building, and you can see the banding. You see as you move up the building, we're proposing a chevron pattern panel between the windows. We've actually stepped the brick surround on the buildings to add 2 steps to it and make them wider. We've added these recess elements that we had on the building that go all the way around. And we've also, like I said, stepped in here. We've added a cast stone cornice here on those tower elements. There was a lot of discussion last time about the overhang there. And I think that's all that really shows you. But you can see the material palette here. We're still proposing a wood soffit on just the penthouse elements. We're proposing a metal diamond shingle on as the siding for the penthouse elements, a lighter brick, and then the accent brick will be in a darker brick color. And this is the previous and proposed north elevations. And you can see that we've changed the roof element on the penthouse structure to create a butterfly roof there as well. Once again, you can see that we've stepped in the top floor and we changed this detail on these tower elements to a cast stone. And this is just that orthographic version of that north elevation, which faces Shepherd Street. There was also a lot of discussion about, we had a brick grid here with some glass block in it. There was a lot of discussion about not liking that, and we've removed it and just put a single window there. And then this is the west elevation, which faces the overpass. And you can see here that there's a little bit of difference in the penthouse element once again. You can also see that we started to add these recesses that give a shadow line here. It's a little fuzzy in these renderings, but the idea is to add a little bit more detailing to all faces of the building. And then finally, the previous proposed and current proposed south elevations. Once again, you can see the change in the penthouse roof structure. You see where we've added the cast stones, these elements, the taller elements here. And then you also see that we've added some detail here as well. And that's orthographic of that. And then some previous and current proposed. I think you can see that there was a comment about the building being boxy or flat. I guess that referenced it as being flat. And the intent here was to pull those windows back within the face of the building to give a little bit more of a shadow line, to give a little bit more depth, and to push and pull those elements so that there was some more articulation in the building. And you can see here that we've started to introduce some more detailing on the canopy. This is a kind of a representation of a sunburst pattern that you would see in Art Deco style motifs. I'm looking at it as you look up King Street. This is the view from the overpass here. Just an aerial so that you can see how those penthouse elements work. And this is looking at it from the back side. If you were a bird in the air looking down on it. And then the rest of the presentation is just the variations between the plans if you need to go through them. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for the applicant?
I have one for you. I'm trying to find the best elevation to. Let's see. Might be elevation. Sorry, I got confused in the drawings here. 4.1 King Street elevation. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find what page that's on. At 4.5. I wrote down 8.5. I'm sorry about that. I think it might just be a rendering question, but I was just curious. I know that elevation's on an angle.
It is.
Is that elevation taken square to the building or is it square to the front elevation?
It's,
Because
so we set it up so that it was orthographic, so it eliminated that in the rendering program that we did, so it eliminated, yeah, you would see this piece a little bit.
well, and what I was curious about is the windows at the upper story, the kind of 5th floor windows.
Mhm.
The mullion bars at that level are shifted from the other mullion bars at the 2nd to the 4th. And is that an intent? And
That-
it looks like the windows are also off place from where those
It's a
are.
rendering, but so that story steps in.
And okay, it's that angle change. as you're
Yeah,
looking
it's
at it.
just the
Okay.
rendering program. So if you look at it, in the orthographic, the intent is that they align.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And then one other simple question, too. At the ground level, above the doors, are those supposed to be kind of translucent spandrel panels? Or are those gonna be kind of visible glass above those?
are you talking
doors?
about this area right here?
Yes.
That's a transom. Yes,
But is it visible or is it translucent? Like, can you see through it?
you'll be able to see through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Public comment, let's have it.
I'm Lisa Jones. I'm with the Historic Charleston Foundation. We have reviewed the request for the conceptual approval of the new hotel at 657 King Street. And we appreciate the applicant reaching out and making revisions based on feedback, including the color change and recessing of the windows on the first floor. Upon re-examination of the application since the last meeting, we're concerned that the hotel does not comply with the height zoning that steps down to 4 stories along King Street. The city zoning map clearly delineates the front portion of the property along King Street as being the Old City Height District 4. This part of the property is intentionally zoned for lower heights so that the King Street streetscape is not buried in things and remains pedestrian friendly. As proposed, the mass and the height are not in keeping with the existing buildings on King Street, and stepping it down to 4 stories along King Street would be more compatible with the neighborhood. I know that I believe the board has looked at the zoning and that an ordinance was referenced where there are certain provisions where when the split zoning occurs, on the least restrictive controls. All of those conditions are predicated on the first sentence, which says where uncertainty exists with respect to the boundaries of any of the districts. And so I guess I'm just raising a flag that according to the zoning map, the city zoning map, there's not uncertainty on the lines of where that exists. So I just wanted to raise that issue, and we respectfully recommend deferral of this application for legal analysis because we believe the proposed height does not comply with zoning requirements. Thank you.
Nina Catherine Alexander with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We also appreciate the applicant's continued outreach. And while the architectural direction continues to improve, we maintain that a 5-story building with a 6-story penthouse that completely fills the site is not compatible with this small scale block of Upper King Street. And similar to HCF's reasoning, and we mentioned this at the last meeting as well, given that the portion of the property fronting King Street is in a 4-story height district, we again would urge the board to protect the character and the scale of the streetscape by limiting the height along King to 4 stories. The board's previous motion for deferral specifically stipulated restudy for several things, including greater sensitivity to adjacent historic structures, which is not reflected in this submittal. The relationship to the 2.5-story single house next door continues to be of particular concern. And the 6-story height district allowance at the rear of the site, we feel allows ample room to redistribute the program that's desired while also respecting context more appropriately. So we would ask the board to hold the line to 4 stories on King Street and require a reduction in the overall massing of the proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Any further public comment? None, then city staff comments and recommendations.
Sure. A previous submission was deferred by the board, March 2025, with a motion for, quote, restudy of massing and scale with specific attention to precedent images and more articulation, end quote. And I think for whatever reason, that second bullet, the second part is missing, but I have my note. And I'm going to refer to it a little bit more colloquial, but quote, because it's specifically about the reference to the ordinance. And this was part of the official notes and records from the previous meeting. At that March meeting, legal was consulted and legal made a determination that that outlines when 2 height districts affect 1 parcel, the code provides that the least restrictive district will apply, but only for 50 feet from the boundary. The applicant's proposal is 45 feet from the boundary, and District 6 is the least restrictive for this particular submittal. Hence, per ordinance 54-103C, height District 6 is to be applied across the entire lot for the submittal as currently designed. And I can, at some point, if somebody wants me to quote the actual ordinance part, I have it in my case as well. We can go to the next week. This restudy app, oh, it is here. Well, there you go. So that's essentially what I just recapped, and then the bottom in italics is the actual ordinance itself. This restudy application includes increased push and pull on the massing of the main facade and plan, a varied cornice line on King Street, which helps break down the appearance as a solid block, a simplified color palette, the elimination of rustication on the top full floor, which aids in the lightening of the visual mass at the top, and the simplification of the penthouse roof line into 2 butterfly roofs, which make them more coherent with each other, but also provides a cleaner profile on the elevation than the previous gable form and provides interest from the crosstown view. The north elevation base at the King Street corner has also been simplified. However, the window would read better sitting below one of the other columns of windows rather than receiving the visual load of the solid brick pier. Since the base fenestration is not developed as its own regular pattern but responds to interior program, staff prefer the fenestration in the base line up at the windows above as the door does with the glass block section, so that solid is over solid and void is over void. The west facade does that, but the north and south do not. That's where it deviates. Staff appreciate the introduction of the glass block vertical element on the north-south elevation. Staff conditions are to continue to study the fenestration placing in the base, so void sits over void, and at preliminary bring samples of all proposed materials to provide details of key moments in the drawing set. And staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with board and staff conditions.
Great, thanks. Applicant response or clarification?
I think I will respond not to the legal, because I'm not qualified to respond to the legal, but but I do want to talk a little bit about the sensitivity to the existing structure and the proposal for the 4 stories on the front of the building. I think this is probably a pretty good image right here. As you can see, that strong cornice line is at the 4 stories, right? If y'all can see that this is 4 stories here. I don't know that 4 stories next to a 2.5 story building is the intention of the height ordinance ever really thought about that 2.5 story structure, unfortunately. I feel like our pause pushing the building back is a reference to that 2.5 story structure. Trying to think about it that way, but as you can see, as you move up King Street, you start to get into the larger structures. So this is a moment where we're pushing the building back and trying to observe that 2.5 structure, but because of the height differentiation there, I don't know that this building will ever read as being in scale with that 2.5 story structure, unfortunately. And as the other comment that I did want to just speak to briefly was the idea that the structure completely fills up the site. And it doesn't. I mean, we do see really good examples of structures in the city that build to the 0 lot line. This is definitely not one of them. As you can see, we've got space all the way around the structure, and we're stepping it back in the front to create a little bit of green space. So the building, the building does not 100% occupy space. It doesn't even go all the way out to the sidewalk at the front to give a little bit more of a width of sidewalk there. Those are the only comments I was gonna make. Thank you.
Okay. All right, on to board discussion.
Well, usually very talkative, don't have anything.
Well, you like it?
You want to go with your quote from the previous project?
Yeah, I think it's a substantial improvement.
Yeah.
I appreciate you working on it.
Okay.
I appreciate you being here today, talking also.
I would say that I had noticed the same thing about the height, like when this first came before board, and we talked about it and legal about it. And I think this is one of the crummiest little ordinances we got. Saved by 5 feet. But it is apparently the way the city's interpreting it. So we're taking that at face value, as we must. Yeah.
I think too, one part of this project that also caught me, and it was one that we talked about in the last meeting, is viewing the structure from the street and then also viewing the structure from the overpass. And I'm glad that there's been a lot of, you included additional renderings from here, because I think this building has 2 experiences, one at high speed and one at pedestrian scale. And I actually feel like the proposed structure, and I actually went back to the December to look at the 2 and the 4 and the 6 to see kind of what that massing led to, and looked at this structure too. And it seems to try to balance, I think, a lot of the experiences around this. I think a lower structure, while more deferential to what might be going on directly adjacent to it, would also lead to seeing a bunch of mechanical units sometimes whenever and that's what you experience as you drive further up that street. I mean, and so it's a tough thing to balance. I do think we're trying to engage the pedestrian walkway in an engaging way. And I do think that the materials as they're rendered, especially the articulation around the windows, the articulation of the cornices is, detailed by staff, is a significant improvement in this versus the.
Okay, any further board comments or motion?
So, yeah, the comment's been made by the public in that the structure and its massing doesn't fit in this block, right? And I would agree with that. I mean, it's 2 and 3 story structures all the way around it, all of which are historic. And when you look at the comparison models, the 2.5 structure is that's right next door to the proposed project is just snuck in there. I mean, it's overcrowding, regardless of as much space as you say is going to be there. This is a considerable upgrade from the last time the project was presented in materiality. I love the symmetry of the building. Mr. Trantham's point, though, is 2 different ways to engage the building. One is on the pedestrian level. But the other is the highway and where I can understand and appreciate the pedestrian level. The view from the highway and really the penthouse structure is what is the most off-putting for me architecturally. I can get over the height and scale of the building. Excuse me, I can get over the massing and scale of the building, but the height of it, at least with the architectural design up at the top of it, is still bothersome to me.
I got a problem, not building problem. In the sense. You know?
Yeah.
But, I think it's, quite a progress from what we had seen originally and, delineation and change of materials and penthouse, now cohesive with the rest of the building and fitting in and filling in the property. We are an urban environment. And that's kind of it. So we can argue about the height non-stop here because we have spotty areas where we have a single family residential of 100-year-old and then we're developing the city over the progress and so to me, I'm going to be agree with staff and support the conceptual approval.
Now that everybody's spoken, anybody want to make a motion?
I will do that, conceptual approval with staff and board comments.
Okay. So we have a motion for conceptual approval with staff and board comments. This subject, do we have a second? I'll second it just to get it out for discussion and a vote. Any discussion on the motion, or y'all want to go ahead and call the roll? I'll just call the roll. How about that? Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
No, not in favor.
Okay, Mr. Metters,
Yay, in fact.
Mr. Trantham,
Yay in favor.
okay. Subject,
Yeah, in fact.
I will vote yay in favor, so the motion carries 4-1.
Just to clarify for the room, Jay White has to recuse for item number 3, so Mr. Metters will be chair for this particular item. Item number 3, 68 Haygood is new construction, a height restricted more in the historic corridor district. They're requesting conceptual approval to upgrade stadium seating and add additional facilities. Lawrence is going to show us the location. And then we're ready for applicant presentation.
Well, good evening. My name is Laura Slagle. I'm with Millen Passon Smith Architecture, and I'm representing the Citadel tonight for the Johnson Haygood Stadium East Stands replacement. Just to get you oriented real fast, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Citadel campus and the west side of the peninsula. The stadium is just south of the formal campus, in between Fishburne, Haygood, Congress, and Parkwood. Several of y'all have driven past this many times. Here's an aerial of the building, and let's zoom in a little bit. Our project scope is really limited in the yellow outlined area right on the east side of the stadium. Just to show you a little bit of context for this project, this is the surrounding stadium. The top right photo is the existing temporary bleachers that are on site, and that's the part that we are replacing. Here are some of the adjacent buildings and across the street. There's Burke High School, and then also some smaller residences on Sumter and Parkwood. Just in terms of the contextual inspiration, we really wanted to draw some details from the Spanish Moorish style around the stadium. We wanted to take cues from the materials that are out there, and also just that sense of place and permanence that the Citadel instills in all of their buildings. Just a quick look at the history. The image on the bottom right is how we know the stadium today. It was built in the 1950s with about 22,000 seats. And we've just compiled some maps and some aerial images through time that shows it changing. There's been some significant changes over time. They built the Altman Athletic Center on one end. They rebuilt the home side seating. And the most significant change is that in 2016, they tore down the pretty significant east side permanent stands that were there and replaced them with the temporary ones that stand today. So right now there's 1,000 temporary seats out there. And our purpose, the reason we're here today is that we are going to replace those temporary stands with permanent ones and move them from the 1,000 temporary seats to 2,000 permanent. The other big part of the project is to provide permanent toilets for these visitors. Currently, they are wheeling in portable toilets for the home games. So this project will provide permanent toilets. And then we're making some accessibility and infrastructure upgrades as well. I think it's helpful to note that we are not creating a new entrance on the east side behind the bleachers. I think this map is, this diagram is really helpful to understand how people access the stadium. So right now the visitors enter on the home side. You can see with the red line, they enter on the home side. They walk past the field to the visitor bleachers, and that's going to remain the same. That will not change in the future. The east side, the existing fence and the gate there is really more of a service entrance. This is where the Citadel facilities and maintenance come in. This is where the visiting buses park. This is where the food truck center and the cannons are rolled in. So just important to note that while we're putting new bleachers there in a new toilet building, it's not going to become an entrance off of Parkwood. So just to dive into the design concept a little bit, this is just an aerial, and the yellow dot represents where we pulled some images that we'll flip through. This is the site plan, and we'll zoom into that area that's circled in red, which is our true project scope. This is the ground level, so you're seeing the underside of the aluminum bleachers, the leg truss structural system that holds it up, and then you're seeing the toilet building. And what you'll see here is that it's a very utilitarian building. This is men's and women's toilets, a family toilet, a janitor, and a storage. That's really all that the building encompasses. You'll notice that we put all of the doors to these rooms on the stadium side facing the bleachers, so we could have a nice, clear, and clean wall facing the street behind it. But pretty simple. The scope also includes a small fenced area to the left on the plan there where the cannons will be rolled in, and then most importantly, an accessible path from the other side of the stadium where the visitors will enter. So if we move up a little higher, you can see the bleacher grandstands for the 2,000 seats. There's also a prefab filming booth that's at the top there. And then you just basically see the roof of the toilet building. A quick section, I think what's important here is that to the top of that filming booth is only 30 feet. This is really pretty small in comparison to the rest of the stadium. And here are some elevations to help you understand the project. The top elevation shows that toilet building and the backside of the bleachers. And I think you all can tell, like, it's a long linear building. We recognize that. So we tried to break up the massing and provide some relief by pushing and pulling the facade, consistent with what happens with the surrounding stadium buildings. We also looked at incorporating some windscreen banners. This is in the second elevation you see. This is if you were standing behind the toilet building and looking at the backside of the bleachers. They really do two things. One is that they set up kind of a nice vertical rhythm. And two, they kind of visually take away from the bleacher structure. We wanted to visually deter people from thinking about going under there or climbing. There's a fence to protect it, but we also wanted to provide a moment for some signage and some branding for the Citadel. This is a football stadium, so we're looking at the fan experience and just using that to our advantage instead of just having some bleachers behind it. Here are some side elevations. You can see we're using that branding again. And this might be the most helpful view here. You know, we recognize that this facility is kind of a background building in the stadium. It's not the most important building there, but it is important to the Citadel for its function. So we want to be sensitive to the context and help it blend into that context and have some subtle nods to the stadium. But we also don't want to overdo it. You know, we think it would be inappropriate to do too much decoration or ornamentation on a toilet building. So we're really looking for that balance. You know, you can see here that we did step the facade kind of in and out and then a little higher and a little lower as you go across that long linear building to break it up. We're using some expressed frames. That's a detail that's pulled directly from the Altman Athletic Center and around the whole stadium. We did not want to put crenellations across the entire building, but we did find it to be a useful tool to help us as we step that parapet up and down and to help make that relief. Most importantly, we're using the Citadel gray color for the stucco, so it'll blend into its context. And then we're introducing some of that branding that I mentioned before. And now I'm just going to kind of walk you around and show you some of the views we prepared. This is from Fishburne Street, and you can see Burke High School to the right, the Altman Athletic Center is behind the trees, and our little bleachers are kind of right in the middle of the back. So you can see that the scale is fairly small. This is the view from Sumter Street. This is if you're right behind Burke High School. This is probably where it's most visible. And so what you'll notice is that you do see some of that windscreen, the graphic signage, you see the building. You also see the two existing fences that we are leaving in place, and you can see that we're right behind them. For all of our views, we kind of have this current photo and then our proposed view next to it. So you can kind of see the side-by-side comparison. I'll tilt through these quickly. This is from Parkwood, so you just drive down that road a little bit farther. There's a couple breaks in the trees that we wanted to study what that long view would look like. And I think as I flip through, what you'll see is that it's really just a cleaner look than what was there before. You know, we're really replacing those temporary bleachers with something that's a little more aesthetically pleasing. We tried to clean it up. And yeah, I think this is a good example. Instead of seeing the structure, you're seeing just a little bit of a nicer look. Here's a view from the actual stadium field, and you can see the scale of it compared to that Altman Athletic Center. A view from above, looking at, once again, just how it's kind of a smaller insertion. This is from Hartwood Avenue, and again, this is probably the best way to see the new building. And again, I think you just recognize it. It blends into the stadium, but still maintains its position as a background building. This is what the visitor would see as they are walking around from that home site and approaching the bleachers. And then as they're actually coming down from the bleachers to go use the bathrooms, this is kind of that area where they're approaching the bathroom doors. And this is just an aerial to kind of give you that final orientation. You know, in summary, this is a small insertion for the Citadel, but a very important function to replace those temporary bleachers and finally put something permanent there. Aesthetically, we tried to really balance that kind of utilitarian building with blending into its context and being part of the Citadel campus and stadium. This time, I'd welcome any comments or questions.
Anybody have any questions for Laura?
And just so no notes about passing notes, the chair keeps official notes, and I realize Mr. Metters doesn't have this when public comment starts.
Thanks, BB. No questions? Public comment?
So my name is Kevin Emberley. I live at 367 Pleasant Street, and I'm the president of the neighborhood association, which obviously is immediately across the street from the Citadel Stadium. And just as a procedural matter, I would point out that our neighborhood association officially, like our presumption is that we oppose any projects that have not come to a neighborhood association meeting for approval by the neighbors, and this is not. So as a neighborhood association, I'll simply say the neighborhood is presumptively opposed to it. Personally, I would like to also add that I am 100% opposed to this building. It has all the charm of a piece of graph paper. It's a box. It has no discernible detail on it. And to say that it is a subtle nod to the rest of the Citadel campus, I mean, it's subtle to the point of being unintelligible. There's no noticeable architectural detail on this building. a few weeks ago, I was invited to a meeting with the Citadel to talk to the architects. And I said exactly this, there is no interest in looking at this building. And my neighbors who live on Parkwood are going to end up for the next however many decades, walking out of their homes, looking at a blank wall, the back of a bathroom building. There needs to be some sort of relationship to the neighborhood. And whether that is done through landscaping and fences and things like that is maybe a small part of it, but the building itself, like I said, has no real detail. I don't know if I can, use this, but on this building, I'm not even sure that anybody, maybe all's eyesight is better than mine. I'm not sure that I would be able to identify where the step back in that building is. It couldn't possibly be more than an inch. And the embrasures in the parapet are basically just drain sections. It's not in keeping with the rest of the school. And at that meeting, I even said, you should add some detail to this and make it more attractive. And the response was, it's too small to have architectural detail on it. And so I thought that seems crazy. And so I walked over to the back entrance to the Citadel and took a picture of one of the Century buildings that is far less publicly notable. And it has far more architectural detail and it has 8 square feet of floor space. So clearly, small buildings can be done well and not be offensive to the eye. It's a bad design. I mean, I'm not an architect, so I'm not going to design a building, but I would even say just if you spun it around, you would have the added detail of doors at least, you know, so I think it's a bad idea. It's a slap in the face for people who live on Parkwood, and I'm strongly opposed to it. And lastly, I know that it's very common for these sort of projects to have details elected to staff. Because this impacts the neighborhood so strongly, I would encourage that any further review be done by the board and not by staff.
Yeah, I got a question for you. You mentioned that you had a visit with them a week ago or several
2 weeks,
weeks,
2 weeks ago.
but not a official HOA visit.
Well, I was I was invited over Zoom because of my personality, maybe because of my position with the neighborhood association.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand that the visit with the HOA.
Yeah, it was me and I forgot the name of the fellow from the west side.
I don't think the
West
question is
side.
about who was there, but it was not a neighborhood association meeting. That-
The Citadel did not approach the neighborhood.
I just wanted to make sure I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Anna Catherine Alexander with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We would just like to echo the comments of the Hampton Park Terrace residents, Mr. Everly, but also the comment that was submitted online in encouraging restudy of the bathroom structure with greater sensitivity to adjacent residential streets. Given its visibility, it should offer greater visual interest with the introduction of openings and enhanced detailing. Thank you.
Lisa Jones, Historic Charleston Foundation. I'm going to echo the comments of the folks who went before me and just say we're not opposed to the bathroom in concept. However, we believe the design of the bathroom is lacking in creativity and aesthetic appeal. This attention to design is especially important because it's so visible to the neighbors along Parkwood Avenue. We also recommend, and I don't know if this is part of the purview of what's talked about, but better the tree options could be a way to hide a little bit of the building if it doesn't get dramatically built better. And it's just, softening that hardscape would be nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? PD?
Certainly. Staff commend the thorough presentation of the context and project history of the stadium's various demolition and build campaigns to clarify the current request. A separate signage package will need to be submitted for all words and graphics to be placed on the bleachers and support building, as these are not considered part of any approvals or motions for this board discussion. Staff appreciate the attempt to visually cover the exposed structure of the bleachers with large-scale wind screening panels. A more permanent architectural solution is encouraged, such as perforated metal screening. The restroom building is obviously modest in nature and includes some references to context. College building staff encourage any opportunity to provide additional subtle architectural elements as the details are studied. The galvanized steel structure for the bleachers is a challenging choice for the climate conditions in this location. Staff encourage the use of high-performance coating as part of the specifications when this project moves into details. Staff has no conditions and recommends conceptual approval with board and staff comments and final review by staff.
Thank you. Thank you. Laura, do you have a response?
Sure. Well, thank you. We appreciate the comments both from the staff and from the public. We understand that this has been a bit of a process to try to find a balance, like I said, between a toilet building. We recognize that this is a utilitarian building and trying to find that balance between how much ornamentation or design or decoration you put on a service building and how plain you make it. So we will certainly take those comments in consideration and continue to study what the facade looks like. We understand those concerns. I know that the owner does as well, and continue to study that detailing. I did want to mention there was a comment about the trees and the landscaping is really outside of the project scope and the boundary, but the owner does plan to address some of that landscaping along Parkwood as a separate effort as part of their kind of normal campus maintenance. So just wanted to share that, that might not be part of this scope, but it's understood by the owner. But thank you, and we will certainly take all of these comments into consideration.
Thank you, Laura. Board discussion and motion.
Going back to architecture of the box, yes, this is utilitarian structure, but what is interesting historically, and I'm going to dig into that again, but in Roman era, the baths buildings were most celebrated, and some of them even saved today. So, an attraction, you can address the box architecturally with detail, and I also think maybe it's opportunity for public art again, murals, give the color, give the substance, give them maybe something to really look at it. And obviously all the rest of the comments from staff, it all makes sense, galvanizing is going to rust eventually and things like that. More permanent screening of the bleachers is again less maintenance in the future, which will be an issue, I'm sure, and things like that. So I personally think this whole thing needs to be, not whole thing, but I don't think it's ready for conceptual approval. It's everything what is listed here and what we heard, it needs rethinking and attention.
Thank you, Laura.
I think I would echo some of your statements too, and I think it's important that this building remain a background building. I know that that was something that was stated here, and I think it's something that is important in this structure, but background buildings can also be simple detail, but have a relationship to kind of foreground buildings as well. And I don't think taking a lot of the crenellations or, detailing of the Citadel and trying to bring it to this building would be an appropriate solution. But I think that there isn't a solution that could draw from inspiration of the neighborhood. And I also think there could be a layered approach to further making this a background building, whether that's landscape walls, whether that's the site strategy that's taken, whether it's there. But I do get a sense that this background building is significantly lacking from a lot of other simple buildings that you find around the city and a lot of the context that you see.
I just don't need to beat a dead horse. When you look at the institutions in Charleston and you think of the College of Charleston, there's multiple architectural styles. When you look at MUSC, there's multiple architectural styles. When you look at the Citadel, there's a single architectural style. The playbook is there. Continuing to refer to it as a toilet building is hilarious to me. It is quite literally what it is, but it looks like we just put a veneer over the portables that are already there. It can be a background building, but it can still be appropriate for the Citadel. I mean, you said at the beginning that the Citadel and its architectural style has a sense of place and permanence. This building does not. It's a temporary structure. And I don't think that it's worthy of a deferral either. I mean, we go back to the drawing board and focus on the Citadel, not necessarily the neighborhood as it relates to the architectural style, if that makes sense. However, as someone who was on a neighborhood board for over a decade, it's critically important for any applicant to always go to the neighborhood association of the community that they are building in. That's all I have.
Thank you. Lawrence, can you go to page 8? Please. As we're getting there, I'm thinking about Hugie Street, Haygood, Fishburne, and Parkwood. And you ride around and what you see is done well. Like this. And then if you go to page 25. As you're going through it, I use your historical photographs, which show the evolution of changes made to and detailing made to buildings, which is exceptional work and design. And we get to this, and the existing visitors bleachers look like the back, unfinished, if not a temporary system, which it was, as I understand it, was built, that those stands were built as temporary. The addition as it continues, to me, it looks like an extension of that temporary use. I also found it amusing, Lauren, I'm not suggesting it was planful, but the use of the term toilet building and service building. I'm not surprised Kevin shows up with something like this. This is a guard tower, I guess, or something like that. But everything has a label. But this design, in my opinion, is not consistent with the great work that the Citadel has done since, you can tell me the date, whenever the first building went out there. And I also doubt that I'm sure you were given instructions on this is what maybe it's even budget driven. I don't have any idea. But I'm, I'm of the opinion that this should even be denied and you start over with something else. But, is there a motion?
I'll motion to deny conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
Is there a second?
I think I will second that.
So there's a motion to deny this application with board and staff comments. Joel, how do you vote?
Be in favor?
Steve?
Yay in favor.
And I vote yea in favor. Oh. Thank you.
Take just a beat to allow Mr. White to return to the room.
Okay, yes, 275 GG.
Right, item number 4 is 275 Fuji Street, which is new construction in Height District 8 in the Historic Corridor District, and they are requesting conceptual approval for a new affordable housing building. Lawrence is going to show us the location, and then I will also have a staff clarification related to this project. Should have been in there. Oh, no. All right, well, I will verbally say, just a second, Matt, we're almost. So, all right, well, so here's my clarification. A different design for this site received preliminary approval with final review by staff on July 24, 2024, and permit approval by staff on October 8th, 2024. Per legal, when this submittal, the one we have before us today, receives conceptual approval by the board, then any previous approvals will no longer be valid. And this would be the sole application for the site going forward. This submittal should be reviewed as a new application for conceptual review.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand.
Sure, absolutely.
So the previous application was brought in by Eddie Bello. and
Correct.
Somebody else maybe, but that was who was responsible for the design that got ultimately was approved
All the way through the permit.
all the way through.
Yeah.
And so now this is a new application.
This is a new application, new architect, new design, so we should treat it as completely new at the conceptual level.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, now we're ready for applicant presentation.
Thank you, BD. Appreciate that. I appreciate y'all letting me be here this evening. My name is Matt Davis. I'm the principal of Davis Architecture. And I'm grateful to be able to present this project to you this evening for a review and comment for conceptual approval. So this is a project, we're presenting a new project at the southwest corner of Eugene and Meeting Streets for conceptual review for your questions and comments afterward. We looked at the aesthetic of the existing 6 structures of the Gant homes and the monumental arch located on the eastern side of the campus of this lot fronting Meeting Street. They serve as inspiration for this 77-unit multifamily facility for the Housing Authority for the city of Charleston. It's a 5-story building. These residents, identified as Colin McKissick Grant homes, were constructed beginning in 1923, and they served the community that was in need of housing. So I'll walk you through the images here, look at the 3D renderings to discuss the architectural details, and then open it up for questions. So this aerial view identifies the location of the site. It also highlights proximity of this site to the of this project and the 6 Grant homes that front Meeting Street to the Inston neighborhood, which is across the highway there, that was constructed starting in 1887. I referenced this is located west of our site. It features a monumental arch similar to the Grant homes. It serves as an organizing part of the campus. It also served as, the instant homes also served as an inspiration for the layout of the Grant homes and their location. These are just some various aerial views of the site. This page highlights some of the familiar architectural language that we employed in the design of the new building. The photos in the upper right and the lower left show a common Charleston Street facade where the adjacent structures are connected by single entrance, or where larger facades are divided into two halves with a single door between both halves. The photos on the lower right, they highlight the piazza design, typically an outdoor living space. It's a lot of times located on the second floor of many residences in the city, particularly in single house design. This is a view of the Grant homes from the street level. You can see the white L-shaped brick structures set apart from each other, and then you see that monumental arch that also faces Meeting Street. These are the buildings that are immediately adjacent to our site. These will be next door and across the street from the project that we're presenting. These buildings are located in the surrounding area. I think they serve as a little bit more relevant examples of the contemporary context on which we leaned for the inspiration for our design. This is just a shot of the aerial demolition. There are currently some two-story townhome units located in the blue rectangles. Those will be demolished before this new structure gets built. This is an architectural site plan. It shows you the scale of the footprint of the building relative to the site. These next two slides are just enlarged views of the first and second floors of the building. They play prominently in the design of the facade facing Hugh Street. They show public spaces. That includes a second floor community room and piazza. Here you see the overall floor plans. Once again, it's 5 stories. It's a roof. That's the roof plan. These are 2-dimensional elevations of the facade. The upper left is a Hugh Street facade. This building is set 4 feet above the finished grade. The vents that you see below the first floor line of the building there, they're actually functional. This building will be constructed on a crawl space for flood purposes. This conceptual section of the building. These are the just conceptual streetscapes showing the relative heights of the adjacent buildings to our proposed building. So this is the Hugh Street facade. It shows what we've attempted to do here. It's a 2-part design on the narrow street facade with a connecting doorway between the halves. This monumental arch between the 2 pieces with the awning, it's a nod to the arches of the Grant homes and its predecessor, the Instant Home site. The entire facade will be painted brick. In this proposal, we're proposing that it's a 2-tone palette in subtle shades of white. If you look on the right half of the facade, there's 3 recessed brick panels that rise from the brick soldier course at the first floor to the ceiling height of the 5th floor of the apartments. And then at the top, the cornice is defined by a composition of a brick soldier course, row locks, and a dog tooth detail, which you can find in the Grant homes as brick detailing. And that detail is found elsewhere on the structure, also some of the hardscape elements. On the left side of this Hugh Street facade, the ground floor is defined by large openings of clear glass, which are in front of administrative and public spaces of the building. And then the defining feature of this facade is the piazza on the second level. It's got a 14-foot ceiling height set at the second floor of the building. The porch wraps the northeast corner of the building. We thought that would be an ideal way to take advantage of the indirect light for the community room. Also, this view highlights the breaks we've introduced in the east facade, which is also recognized kind of as a Meeting Street facade that fronts the parking lot. You can see we pushed units in and out as you go down this long facade of the building. This is the second of the three entries on the building. It also shows the second time on the left, to the left of that arch entry, it's the second time we've used a block with the vertical recess panels. This view of the east facade, which is you can see between two of the Grant homes. To the left of the block, there, the vertical recess panels, we've introduced a new pattern of windows. There's twin window units you can see that run along the first floor. On top of this line of windows at the second floor level is a new brick soldier course and a roll lock. There's a brick detail that carries along the sill height at the fifth floor of those windows. And that's also present. That detail is also present on the left-hand side of the UG Street facade as well. So at the far end of the parking lot elevation of the building is the third time we're using these recessed brick arches, recessed brick panels as an organizing element. This is a long view of the parking lot side from the other end of the building. This is the facade opposite UG Street. On this west facade, we carried the twin window unit language along the first floor, below the single window units along the length of the building, until you reach the original block with the vertical recess panels. That left-hand block is the section that fronts UG Street. This is a view as you're coming up from Pound Meadow Brewery, looking down the building. You can see the west side of the building. This is a view from street level of the corner of Hugie and Meeting Streets. All right, this aerial view really highlights the relationship of the new building to the existing Grant homes. And this shows the visual connection between the Grant homes and the new building, which really is going to end up serving as a backdrop to these 6 residences. This is an enlarged view of the middle entry to the building. Probably will be the primary entrance for the residents, because when you enter through that space, you enter the leasing office. So, and then this last image, it's an enlarged view of the Hugie Street facade. We think this one highlights a connection to the pedestrian walkway, but it also presents a formal gateway to this facility of private residences. We hope the residents will be excited to use this space and return to it and have a safe place to enter. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? None. Any public comment regarding this application?
I'm Carol Jackson. Just to full disclosure, I'm a privileged member of the Charleston Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. And I'm also here as an advocate for design, and my lifestyle began, or my physical life began in Charleston not until 2015, but I came to Charleston in the early 80s with the National Trust for Historic Preservation as Mayor Riley was bringing back the city for a whole new era of prosperity and preservation. So I was very privileged to be part of that experience. And then fast forward, our daughter went to college here. We bought our first property on the peninsula in 2002, and that became sort of thankfully, the biggest build out was an abandoned gas station right across Cummings Street from where we had put our investment into a single family house. And that is now a very, I think, well recognized little condo neighborhood, Cannon and then St. Philip. So it goes across that whole block. And I watched the way that the BAR worked at that point in time because I was so excited that that neighborhood was going to have a regeneration. Then fast forward again, I was privileged to be on council when the original 275 Hugie Street was given its zoning in order to be able to put it into the Height District. So I feel like I'm sort of a very honored cheerleader of this property. And I know that the BAR is you're not authorized and you're not allowed to literally consider the use for a property. But I do feel like, to answer Mr. Meadows' unanswered question, the reason that we had to, basically abandon Mr. Bellows' beautiful and amazing design is for cost. The construction industry is not our friend. We have financing. The way we can build this property is we're not dependent on public subsidy. We're able to authorize a float bond, issue our own bonds, and we know that they're going to be successfully sold and we'll be able to finance the structure, but there's a cap on the financing limit. So we had to basically decide, do we want to build housing for the city? Or do we want to have a vacant lot that we'll have to wait for another day of prosperity? And I think we're making the right decision as the owner entity. And we're here to, I think, very proudly, this property, if it had been the first design, we would have been very thrilled to present it to you all. Unfortunately, Mr. Bellows' firm is a walk on water entity in our community. And it's hard to say that we would not be proud to build his property, but we hope that you can approve this. Thank you very much.
My name is Josh Good, live at 33 Charleston Street. So to kind of piggyback on what they just said, even though it doesn't have to do with design necessarily, I think the fact that this is a public project, public-private partnership with the city of Charleston and the developer warrants discussion about financing and why the original design, that everyone seemed to like and got approved pretty great, fast, was discarded and how the new architect came to be, right? Because this original project was part of a RFP back in 2020. And the design aspect of the RFP was like half the points in the award of the project to the overall developer, contractor, architect team. And the fact that they got awarded the project, got a design approved with the architect from that team. And now 4 years later, due to financing, have discarded that architect and that design. It just seems like a bait and switch at this point. The city dedicated millions of dollars after the, last year or 2 years ago towards this project based on the previous design. And I feel like they may not have done that if this had been the project that was really put forth towards them at that time. So I don't know how the legal process works with like the team being allowed to just yank an architect design and choose someone new without more public input, since this was originally a public RFP. It just seems like it's just they're using the budget and the fact that everybody wants affordable housing so badly in Charleston, so needed in Charleston. They're almost holding the design hostage. Like, all right, well, if you don't pass this, you're not getting any at all. And that shouldn't be the case. Like any project that has its partnership with the city should be held to a higher standard, because the city should be wanting to develop the best examples of these projects, of any project for that matter. And I know we're not here comparing this design to the other project. This is just a new submission, but it just is blatantly not as good of a design. And I hate saying that because I don't like to bash architecture, other architects. Everybody has, they've worked very hard on this for probably a very long time to get here. But if you do compare the two, it's just night and day between like public space, private space, outdoor space. The 5 stories versus 4 stories, porches versus no porches, intercirculation versus extra circulation, main entrance on Hughes Street versus main entrance off of parking lot. So it's just like they almost tried to do the opposite of what the other design did in terms of this building. And I think, in my opinion, it's made it much less successful. And I don't understand how it saves money adding a story and decreasing the number of units from 85 to 77. Right. So like we're losing units, we're gaining height, and we're losing architectural quality. And the residents are losing quality other units. Again, I think, one of the beautiful things about Williams Terrace is the fact that there's outdoor porches for all the residents to use, and they're highly used and becomes this communal space, the main entrance of the building. And you're taking away all this like public space for the people that want to use this building. And I feel like multifamily housing in Charleston has finally begun to like get a better design aesthetic and not just do a extruded box up to your height limit. And I feel like this building is that's just what this is. It's a footprint taking up 5 stories with one move on the front of the building for a porch. That's not even at the ground level to make it engaging with the public. And like the only redeeming quality is the courtyard out in front of my remark, who always does excellent work. And again, like a little bit of porch is nice, to help reduce the scale. But then the rest of the building is just 5-story sheer walls with no articulation between, they didn't try to carve out any volume vertically. All they did was just carve out volume and plan, and just creates this monotonous facade on the both long ends. And this building is gonna be very visible from the east and west, because you have a couple 100 feet between this and the houses on Main Street.
Mr. Good, I'm sorry, you're a little past your 2 minutes. So you might need to wrap up your.
So I feel it's like the lady at the beginning said, if this gets exceptional approval, then the pre-design approval goes away completely, is what I heard her say. And it would be a shame for that design not to even be, like, it's like it never existed anymore, if this gets approval tonight. So I think like this should not be approved in its current form. Maybe eventually it will, if the right manipulations are made to it. But I don't think the city should be ready to throw away a better design just to get affordable housing, which we're going to get anyways. And when we do get it, it should be what we want and what we need. Thank you.
Any further public comment? Ma'am, excuse me, Ms. Jackson, I'm sorry, we want to limit that.
Lisa Jones, Historic Charleston Foundation. We have reviewed the applicant's request for conceptual approval of the new affordable housing development. I do just want to start by saying in general, we're incredibly supportive of affordable housing, but we also understand that there are unique challenges that this use presents, and we have some feedback on the design. The open porch on a portion of the front facade is a nice element that breaks up some of the mass of the building, but we would like to see it extended across the entire Hugie Street facade. Further, we suggest that the design of the Hugie Street facade should be more unified and simplified. There are a lot of competing design elements on this front facade. The side elevations, especially the elevation facing Meeting Street, appear institutional and generic, which is not consistent with the look and feel of Charleston. We suggest that the massing and details are restudied to reduce the impact of the overall scale of the structure. The proportions of the windows on the front facade need restudy. The spacing from the top of the windows to the cornice is too large and somewhat visually awkward. Larger windows throughout the building would enhance the building's appearance, and we suggest a restudy of the overall fenestration. Our recommendations are for the applicant to restudy the height, scale, mass, and architectural direction of the building and come back to BAR with the concept more consistent with other Charleston housing sites. Finally, we do appreciate that the applicant met with us and that they are attempting to design affordable housing development, and we look forward to working together to put something on the site. Thank you.
Anna Catherine Alexander with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We also appreciate the architect reaching out to discuss this project. We have long been supportive of creating new affordable housing on this site, and we were excited about the previously approved design, as everyone was. It offered interesting architecture and a dynamic ground floor. And while we understand the need to make the numbers work for this project, affordable housing cannot come at the expense of quality design and contribution to the public realm. This building will not only be an important part of the streetscape along Hugie, but highly visible from Meeting Street. Significant study is needed to break down the building's blocky massing, especially on the long east and west elevations, with greater depth, detail, and material variation. The monotonous, undersized fenestration should also be restudied to improve the overall scale. On Hugie Street, the building is disconnected from the public realm with a singular narrow access point and an elevated second floor porch that would be more effective if on the ground floor. Greater effort should be put toward creating a more welcoming pedestrian experience with meaningful connection to resident amenities. Given the level of restudy needed, we ask for deferral for mass scale and architectural direction. Thank you.
Any further public comment? City staff, comments and recommendations?
Sure. Oh, that was the one that was supposed to be up at the front.
There it is.
Okay, but staff appreciate the thorough package provided by the new applicant, as well as their previous meetings and willingness to engage the BAR in an iterative process. There we go. Staff affirm the height scale requested in the submittal is appropriate for the varied but densifying context and to support the need for affordable housing on the peninsula. Staff also support the use of brick throughout as proposed. Staff's primary concern is with the massing and general architectural direction of the current proposal. The Hugie Street facade can serve as a means to conceptualize the whole, while some details need further study, differing cornice lines, string coursing, across the porch volume, etc. The overall initial direction is developing well. As the applicant demonstrates through context renderings, the east elevation is highly visible from Meeting Street because the existing housing is modest in height and spaced far apart. Given this visibility, staff require the east elevation be composed as a main facade with the same level of attention and detail that is beginning to develop on the Hugie Street elevation. Currently, there is a lack of clear fenestration composition on the east and west elevations in the middle section. There is also no compositional relationship between the base fenestration and the upper fenestration. Staff encourage the applicant to pursue simplification and organization of the window types and patterns across the whole design. And while there is a nascent form, further development is needed for detailing a clear base, middle, and top ordering system is encouraged. Staff recommendation is for denial.
All right, applicant response or clarification? Sometimes this catches people off guard. You don't have to have a speech.
No, that's okay. No, I just want to say I appreciate the comments that y'all brought to the table. Definitely look forward to y'all's comments. We hope we can move forward on it, but thank you very much.
Okay. Wait, board discussion. I might kick this one off. Try not to do that much when I'm chair, but I agree with staff's analysis of what's happening here. And I think, you know, you start with a really just a highly irregular floor plate, you know, a footprint that's appears to be driven pretty much by program. And that yields a really confusing massing. And then you're trying to figure out how to use, you know, materials and fenestration to bring order to it. But I think that there needs to be a stronger conceptual basis for the form of the building. And then the solution will grow out of that. But right now it starts, you know, that footprint. If you look at the plan with all the jogs, it yields something that's going to be really hard to resolve with any elegance and in compliance with, you know, what staff is suggesting. We've heard from some of the members of the public and from the BAR design principles.
So I began to look at the context photos that were included from the historic photos and the photos of recently been built buildings that you looked at. And I had a difficult time in the drawing that was presented finding a relationship to those context photos. That's all I have.
Yeah, I think I echo what you and Mr. White have said, Mr. Metters. I find a hard time kind of connecting some of the organizational logic from those conceptual photos or from the precedent photos, and I agree, I think, completely with a lot of staff's comments and those as presented from the public here as well.
I think, you know, looking at the programming, maybe it's self-inflicted because somewhat, you have these long elevations and you're trying to break it out and it's not successful by far because it's so many different elements, not cohesive, trying to unite with those entrances, what you call it, arches. But they really form to the whole form. So again, going through all the detailed analysis of staff, this building needs to be revisited altogether.
And, you know, and I don't think that, oftentimes people may have the impression that this process is about, well, if you make it more expensive, they'll probably pass it. And I actually have often observed the opposite. And I think what you're hearing out of staff and out of the board about the architectural direction of the project probably points to a simplified, streamlined concept that might in fact become more affordable because there's just less going on. You don't have to make as many moves because the form, proportion, and sense of order and hierarchy are correct. And if you look at any of Charleston's old big buildings, they're actually formally very simple. You know, and there's really, I don't think there's any demand here that you do something wild and crazy or especially elaborate. I mean, it can be really quiet and refined and very simple. But and it probably should be to express its purpose in life. But I just add that so that nobody gets the wrong impression that we just feel like it doesn't look expensive enough.
Right, it's just, you know, you have a lawn, but you can proportionally look at the elements and unite them. And I'm trying to pull in with something totally different in. So anyway, I said my piece.
Okay. Anybody wish to make any more comments or state a motion?
I don't know how much this can be less expensive. Also, no, better.
Yeah, I mean, and as you've also heard, we're trying to be very diligent about making sure that this application gets its day without being compared to any previous application. It's not common, but it does happen that we see one project proposed for a property, and then a couple of years later, we see something different, and it's just like the other one. Yeah, it never happened. So just in the interest of expressing our interest in maintaining fair proceedings, just wanted to note that.
And I wanted to make a comment based on what Catherine said. I was not a fan of the previous project.
Really worried about those birds.
Well, I'll make a motion to deny this application based on the board and staff comments.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion made by Mr. Metters for denial based on board and staff comments. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Okay, motion made and properly seconded. I'll go down the roll. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yea in favor.
Mr. Metters? Subject?
Yeah.
Mr. Trantham?
Yay in favor.
I vote likewise. The motion carries 5-0.